Hi everyone, you're listening to the NDIS Circle. I'm Dan McCutcheon, and today in this podcast we're going to talk about what actually is the National Disability Insurance Scheme. The NDIS seems like it's in the news sort of every 5 minutes at the moment. The disability support scheme that now supports 550,000 Australians living with a disability, and it's become a little bit of a complex beast. So over the next sort of 10 minutes or so, we're going to look at how the NDIS came about, the principles of the NDIS, who is eligible, and what the future might look like. So let's get into it. So how did the NDIS come about? Well, in 2010, the Productivity Commission received submissions from about 1,000 people living with disabilities and those working in the disability sector. The message was clear. The existing state government systems were not working. So in 2013, the legislation for a nationwide disability support system, aka the National Disability Insurance Scheme, was passed. The Gillard Labor government introduced the NDIS with trial sites in 2013, that same year, and then commenced rolling out across Australia in 2016. The current Minister for the NDIS, Bill Shorten, played a key role in establishing the NDIS back then, and WA was the final state to join the NDIS in 2018, where I live and work. So who is eligible? To be eligible for the NDIS, you need to be 1, an Australian citizen, 2, aged under 65 or have at least been granted access to the NDIS prior to turning 65, and then 3, live with a permanent and significant disability that has a functional impact on your day-to-day life across a number of areas like mobility, self-care, forming friendships, connections, work, study, participating in the community, those sorts of things. The principles of the NDIS are person-centered choice and control. So this means that people with disability are assumed to have capacity to take control of their lives and to make decisions, and they're able to exercise choice and control over how and who supports them, and how their supports are provided on a day-to-day basis. Capacity building, the idea behind the NDIS is that as people receive NDIS support, they become more independent, they build their capacity, and ideally over time this means that as people become more independent, they actually reduce their reliance on government formal paid support. And that sort of has a dual benefit where people are able to take more agency and build independence in their lives, and also the government saves money over time because people are less reliant on support over time. The third principle of the NDIS is that it's a social insurance model. So it's a support and safety net for those that will need it. So disability arises socially rather than medically, and what that sort of means is that people are disabled because of barriers in the community, barriers in society. It's the way society is set up that disables people rather than the actual disability itself. And the NDIS will provide lifelong support to those who need it. Number 4, social inclusion and participation in the community. Number 5, economic participation, which means employment or study. And finally, community engagement. So as well as support for people with disability to assist them to participate in the community and form friendships, the NDIS also raises the profile of disability in the community by being on the news and being something that we talk about, and it's in the social consciousness, and that creates awareness, promotes inclusion, and sort of changes some outdated societal attitudes. So what does the future look like for the NDIS? Crystal gazing is tricky business, but there's a recent independent NDIS review, and that signaled some key changes. I think there was around 129 recommendations, something like that, handed down, and that are to be implemented over sort of the next few years or the next 5 years. They're just recommendations at this point, and they still need to be implemented. So they may look different over the next few years, and some of them may not be implemented, but it does give us a little bit of a lay of the land as to where the NDIS might be going. A particular one is around all NDIS providers going to be being mandatory for all NDIS providers to be at least registered or enrolled. So there's going to be some increased safeguarding and some increased compliance around NDIS providers. I think as it currently stands, there are around 16,000 registered NDIS providers in Australia and something like 154,000 that are non-registered. So that's obviously a huge piece of work, and the majority of the market for people with disabilities are non-registered at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how that's implemented over the next few years. My opinion is that the NDIS isn't going anywhere. There's definitely going to be some changes coming in the next few years, but Australians have fought way too hard and for too long. People with disability have fought way too hard and for too long to let the NDIS fail. There's going to be increased focus on measurable outcomes of support. No doubt the NDIS is already a goal-orientated model, but this will only increase as the scheme sort of looks to track the quality of service providers, particularly with that registration and enrolment requirement and sort of people's individual progress towards goals. And perhaps funding might be awarded to providers that have better efficiency and effectiveness at supporting people to achieve their goals rather than just for time spent supporting someone. There'll be hopefully more targeted strategies to support people with disability into the workforce and into open employment. I think this is an area that the NDIA haven't seen as much progress as they would have liked, and people with disability haven't seen as much progress as they would have liked. There may be some more market stewardship in regional and remote areas, like a state like mine, WA, or a similar state like Queensland has a lot of regional and remote areas, and the sort of free market model where the NDIA hasn't really taken a stewardship role and has just said, when there is supply, services will come, hasn't really worked. A lot of providers just haven't gone into those areas. It just has been too difficult. So in those regional remote areas in WA and Queensland and all over Australia, there's been demand that's sort of far outstripped the supply of service providers. So I think there's some more market stewardship coming. There's going to be a renewed focus on the local area coordinator role. That was a key recommendation coming out of the NDIS review, and that's to fulfill the original intent of the LAC role, which was to not just do planning meetings, but to actually capacity build for people and promote community inclusion and provide linkages and inclusion in the local community rather than just being that NDIS plan development. There will be increased oversight on providers to reduce fraud, which is a significant problem in the NDIS, and improve consistency, quality and safety of supports. There's going to be continued focus on sustainability of the scheme. I'm not going to say increase because there's already a massive amount of focus on the sustainability of the NDIS. We've all heard about the costs being much higher than anticipated. So the NDIS currently costs around $30 billion to administer, and that's projected to increase. So reduction of waste and inefficiencies and fraud will really help to reduce those costs, as well as some renegotiation of responsibilities and cost sharing between the federal government, the NDIA, and the different state governments. And that's going to look like some increased and more robust foundational supports across community services and government services like health and justice, child protection, education, rather than all of the reliance being on the NDIS to meet those needs. Okay, I hope that's been helpful on providing a little bit more information on what exactly the NDIS is, who it might be eligible for, and perhaps where the scheme might be going. You've been listening to the NDIS Circle. I'm Dan McCutcheon, and I can't wait to see you next week. Bye for now.